What happened to your best friend after high school? We were pretty inseparable in high school. My mom called him my other half and always told me how good we were together. Then I moved. It's funny how 5 hours away makes such a huge difference. My family was doing okay, but he and his mom were not. He was in a toxic situation and he needed to leave home. We tried to stay in contact and did as best as we could. Email each other, use my mom's cell phone to talk nights and weekends. We had bonded over games and the same things, and we joked that we'd move him up to Minnesota with me. My long-distance girlfriend tried to house him for a bit because of his family getting evicted. That fell through and he moved around the Midwest with other family of his. It was never stable. His toxic mother always tried to follow and it made his life pretty terrible. But he made it work. I don't think he graduated, but I'm fairly sure he got his GED. Eventually after high school, I started going to college in Minnesota, but he was in a rough situation still. The idea of him moving up with me with other friends fell through because he might be unable to work due to stress and holding a job. I was worried renting an apartment with buds might not work either. I decided to cancel the plans. He was devastated. He said he felt like I betrayed him. I felt so ashamed as well. I always believed you never gave up on your best friend, through thick and thin, right? We sort of stopped talking for a while. It wasn't until years later I messaged him on Steam. I was probably intoxicated. I just unloaded that I felt like a terrible friend. I caused the distance between us. I was so scared of an unstable situation that I wasn't confident it would work out. He admitted he felt like he lost some trust in me as well. He had started talking to this girl in California and wanted to connect, and I vowed to help him out. We made plans. He was in North Dakota now. I drove up to grab him. I housed him for a week. It was amazing. It felt like old times, video games and good friend talk. I drove him up to the airport in Minneapolis and it felt like a lifetime. It was kinda silent. But we got there. I walked him to the gate and we just barely made it there. The boarding agent was freaking out because they just announced last call, and we had hugged for just a brief moment and off he flew to Cali. Damn, the feelings of being a terrible friend flew back to me. I felt awful for like a month. It sounded like things were going well though. Him and the girl were doing good. He had found some work I believe, and we tried to keep talking and we tried to make video games over the internet. My life just started getting infinitely busy, multiple jobs, school still needed to be finished, other social obligations. I could keep up, and sure enough I dropped the ball on communication again. The next time I checked in he had moved to New York with the girl. He was still trying to find solid work, but they had a house from her parents and they seemed okay. I told him I'd come up there and see him sometime when my life fixed itself around, but finances are just never there. We fell out of communication a lot, and he pointed out that a lot of the times I talked to him, I would say the same stuff, that I felt like a bad friend and wanted to keep in contact and it would last a bit. It didn't bug him, but it was just something he expected because my life was so chaotic. He recently gifted me Caves of Cut on Steam and I installed it, but I haven't had time to play with battling certain aspects of my life. Michael, if you're reading this, man, I miss you a lot. What was the worst decision you have ever made out of anger? My younger brother was troubled in his teens and had serious anger issues. One night I got a call from my mom. My younger brother and his friend were at her house tormenting her. They were both really intoxicated. I made my way there. In the time it took me to get there, she'd called the police after my brother had hurt her and thrown her down the stairs. She'd managed to get him out the house, but he and his friend were trying to break the door down to get back in. My brother had quite the reputation with the local police, and so they sent as many resources as they could, 5 police cars and a police dog unit. My mom's street was lit up in blue and red flashing lights by the time I got there. My brother and his friend had ran into the large park behind my mom's house when they heard the sirens of the police, so the dog unit was out trying to find them while I comforted my mom. They eventually were found hiding in a bush and dragged back to a police car in cuffs. I spoke to the policeman in charge and convinced him that I could control my brother when he was intoxicated and pleaded with them to let him come stay at my house rather than lock him up. My mom tearfully agreed and they let me walk away with him. The policeman gave me his mobile number and told me to phone him directly if there was any more trouble with my brother. My brother and I walk away, and to begin with, no problems. Then as we get closer to mine, the intoxicated ramblings start and he tells me he hates me, this is all my fault, he's ashamed to be my brother because I'm gay and so on. So, I decide I don't want him to come to mine and reach into my pocket to get my phone so that I could phone that policeman and just have him taken away. At that precise moment, I look up and my brother has swung a punch in my direction. I dodged it and clocked him in the side of the head with my phone, smashing it. He almost lost balance but then definitely did when I struck him again. I then completely lost it. All the rage for what he had done to my mom, for what he'd said to me, for the way he acted, it all came out. I went angry Iron Mike on him. It wasn't until I had sat on him, pinning him to the ground and hurt him one final time that I realized what I'd done. I had took it so far I was certain he was dead. I can't phone for help. I've smashed my phone. I can't shout for help. It's 2 a.m. and there's nobody around. Right then I make the single scariest decision I've ever made. I put my coat under his head and left him there in the pouring rain. I ran back to my house faster than any human has probably ever moved. I get to mine, burst in the door, shout at my friends to call an ambulance, tell them where my brother is and then take off running back to him. Luckily he's still lying there, out cold, but breathing. One of my friends arrives a minute or so later. We keep him warm until the ambulance arrives. That policeman also arrived at the same time. He said it was likely my brother wouldn't remember what happened and that he wouldn't put this in his final report. I got in the ambulance with him to the hospital and then sat there for the next 8 hours waiting for him to regain consciousness. When he was able to have a visitor in the room, I walked through, ready to apologize. What happened next blew me away. He broke down in tears immediately, apologizing for always being such an insufferable a-hole, begging me to forgive him. He ended up with a broken nose, half an ear missing, a fractured cheekbone, and a hairline fracture in his dome. He couldn't go to work for a month, which was made even more tormenting for him because my mom refused to talk to him or do anything for him. They didn't speak for about 18 months until he gave her first grandchild. That brought the whole family together and completely changed him. Now our family is stronger than ever. Update: my 63-year-old boss wants me to adopt him. I realize that Dave is a manipulator who gaslights his way into getting what he wants instead of just asking. Because I had a parent who did the same thing, I am more susceptible to that approach than I'd like to be. I told Dave about my issues with my parents once and about their manipulation tactics, and for him to do the same to me upsets me a lot. The first thing I did was to sit down with my husband and explain the whole thing to him. I wanted him to know that I was going to start setting limits with Dave, and that part of the limit setting would involve casting him in the role of a hopeless romantic who is into girls 25 years younger than him and insists on lots of couples-only time. So when I put in my vacation request for this summer and Dave asked archly, "And where are we going this year?" I chuckled ruefully and said, "My husband Bob is such a romantic that he insists on us taking a mini-moon together every year and he doesn't want anyone to know where we're going." Dave pushed a little, even to the point of saying he could easily take that same week off, but I basically took the approach of treating it as a joke, which worked quite well. Then 2020 came along and we had to cancel our plans, but if it worked once, it'll work again. When I started planning a ticket purchase for an autumn concert series that Bob and I always attend with friends, one that Dave also likes and used to attend with his sister who moved out of state, I offered to include him for the one performance that we take a large group to. He immediately replied, "Yes, I'll go with you for that one, and then you can go with me to all the rest," to which I responded, "Oh, the rest of the series are dates for Bob and me." Such a romantic guy he is, still wanting to go out on dates with his wife. Dave pushed a little again, but blaming it all on someone else, and especially on someone who is a man, was quite effective. He pretty much already assumes that all men except him are scoundrels whose only goal is to get laid. A couple of months ago, Dave stopped by my desk one afternoon and complained, "My stupid brother wants me to give my mother's ring to his obnoxious stepdaughter at their Easter dinner. He's so greedy that he'll probably go pawn it. I really don't want to go to their place for Easter. I really wish I had someplace else to go for the holiday. It would be so nice if only someone else would invite me to their Easter dinner." I just replied, "Hey, did you hear that Ferguson Legal sent back his edits on that policy document we drafted on llama herding? He completely changed the meaning of the middle section, and will be in violation of the llama management ordinance if the guidance is released that way." That produced a very predictable response, one that successfully kept the topic of Easter dinner out of the conversation for the rest of the day. It takes a bit of planning to keep a distraction like that ready in my back pocket, so to speak, but there's always some new crisis or controversy looming in our organization, so it's not all that huge of a stretch. 2020 has honestly helped the situation too. The social distancing requirement has been a godsend in helping me establish and maintain a healthier degree of emotional distance. It is essentially impossible at our workplace to get away from Dave. We are now working from home, and to say that is a blessing is an understatement. Dave still tries inviting himself for dinner over the phone or during meetings, but it is easiest to shut down over phone.